So, welcome to this next part of our video and our doula talks in Berlin.
Okay, so Jaguar, I know you as a women's healer, a teacher of the women's school. I know you as a cranial sacral healer. I know you as somebody who has trained in midwifery and worked in birth and as a doula. And I know that your journey is, like most women's, very multifaceted, that you contain multitudes. And I'm wondering about sort of how you got from the moment of studying midwifery to this place you're in now of being like an educator and a doula, and how did you decide to go in that direction with your talents and skills, and what brought you to those different places?
Okay. That was like probably the most difficult part of my journey, the one you've pinpointed.
Yeah. It's an unusual step.
Yeah. And I don't know where to start. It was very difficult for me because I had this intense passion for becoming a midwife, studying midwifery. And when that intense passion had its own journey, its own story. And I studied midwifery for half of a bachelor program in New Zealand. And to get there, to get into the program, to apply for it, everything, that all took time. And it happened while I was traveling, so it was a massive process of mine to do that. And a big leap of faith, because I really had a vision about where it would happen, how it would happen, and then I went to live in this part of New Zealand I didn't know. I hadn't. I just knew that I had to study there in those circumstances, and I also did it. And for the first part of the program, I had this experience which was really interesting because maybe you guys know this sense of having like a sense of, okay, I'm doing this thing now, but next step is going to be this thing, and next step is going to be like a kind of sense of time, and okay, this is this phase, and the next thing is going to be that next thing. And while I was in this first part of a program, my slate was like blank. It was like a white wall, and I felt like there's nowhere else to go. There's nothing else to do. This is it. And what happened just before that time and kind of during that time was that midwifery became to me the most important thing in the world. Like the most important profession in the world, but more than that. Like that being a midwife is kind of close to having enlightenment. Like it was that intense.
Wow.
And it's difficult for me to explain now because I'm in a different place now with it, but when my soul started talking to me and telling me that the time is ending and that I need to let go of this, which is what started happening, as you can imagine, with those kind of thoughts and beliefs and ideas in my head and feeling that, it was very, very painful. So it was actually one of the most painful processes in my life, because I had this massive journey that had taken me to even studying this thing. And I was already a doula when I started studying midwifery, so I was already in the birthing field anyway, and I wanted to deepen that. And I'd already met Michael Ador. That was a whole other story that all happened before. And I had this vision already at that time of that I would be creating a women's school, that I would be creating something about the feminine. I had very clear sensationary states about where this was all going. It wasn't, so linear, but it was like I knew that, and I thought, well, in creating a school, it would be very good to have a bachelor in midwifery, for example.
Right.
I had this idea.
Sure.
Yeah.
And apart from the fact that I thought that being a midwife was something close to being an enlightened yogi or something.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I was studying it between Nelson and Christchurch in New Zealand. And it so happened that even though I lived in Nelson, the times when I went down to Christchurch were the times when the major earthquakes happened in Christchurch. So me and my friends, the beautiful, lovely midwifery friends I made, who I love to bits until this day, it was a very special time for me studying. I met the most gorgeous women. I felt so happy, I really have to say. I felt so at home with it. I loved living in Nelson. I completely adored particularly some of the women I met there, and met a lot of really inspiring people, soul sisters, honestly. And then these earthquakes happened, and within all of that, there was a shaking in my soul happening simultaneously, and a very strong voice began emerging. You need to let go of this, you need to let go of this. This was kind of the second year of the program. And things started falling apart, literally, like these earthquakes that happened in my life, for everybody in Christchurch and also for me, also had other earthquakes happening in my life. So, for example, the relationship I was in at that time fell apart, and that had lots of consequences because it was a very deep learning experience in itself. And this voice in my soul got stronger and stronger and stronger, and I started doing a process about healing relationships and dedicating myself to this course that was all about fundamentally healing my way of relating in intimate relationships. And my friend who I lived with used to joke, "Oh, you're dedicating just as much time to your midwifery as you are to this relationship healing program." Mm-hmm. And I actually said yes, because you know what? Relationships are like such a big part of my life. Like the next time I'm in a relationship, it's so important for me for it to be a sacred union and coming from a really whole, healed place. And so somehow I felt really like, I need to dedicate this time now because of what had happened before. And then I had a lovely dear friend invite me into a medicine woman school of a shamanic teacher in New Zealand who at that time was just beginning her medicine woman school. And we embarked together, me and a couple of close girlfriends, on this journey of it was called at the time the Rite of the 6 Moons, which was all about purifying and cleansing and lots of different levels of your energy system with these beautiful New Zealand flower essences. And accompanied by her teachings, Francella Soski Weiber, and her medicine woman school. And so a lot of different things kind of were coming together, and my soul was saying stronger and stronger, you have to let go. And I was really scared because I really felt like I felt like I would lose the foundation of what the meaning of my life was somehow at that time. And I packed everything into boxes and gave it to friends and had someone look after my car like as I'm leaving the country. And I still sort of pretended that it's not happening, and I still told the school that I would probably come back. I still thought to myself I would come back, for sure I would come back. Told my friends I would come back, but I'm sure that I was denying that I knew. And then I visited my family back in Europe, and I actually left it until 72 hours before the flight back.
Oh my god. I love it.
And I was sitting my sister was living in Rome at the time in Italy, and I was sitting on her balcony, and I knew I have to decide because otherwise I would lose this flight back. And I have this very intense relationship with New Zealand because I was born there. And even though my family's not from New Zealand, I feel like it's like my home. And being somehow taken away from New Zealand is very heartbreaking for me. So like that ticket back was like my lifeline. So I didn't want to lose that. So I called the airline, like, honestly, a couple of minutes before it would have been too late. And they were like, well, we don't know. Is it 72 hours? And it was really like, and they changed it for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And then I called the school, and then I broke down in tears.
This is an amazing story. Can we talk a little bit more about like your deep sense of knowing that you describe here that has led you to these things, and how that relates to the rise of feminine energy in the world? Because you've said like many things in school, you know, and in conversation where you've mentioned that like there is a blossoming understanding and there's a growing awareness of the feminine and why it's important energetically to bring it sort of back to the earth. How do you know about this? Like where do you think that's going, and just why is it needed?
Well, what I can say about that is that this inner voice, that voice of the soul, at least in my life, has definitely taken me into some very difficult places. It's not all kind of fluffy, and it takes so much courage and so much willingness to trust that. And that there's so much wisdom and so much knowing and intelligence that we are not able to find in universities or in trainings, in schools or in books. And that that's a large part of what this feminine awakening is about. That and what the women's school, for example, is based on is that, of course, it's really cool to know about our physiology, our anatomy, the hormonal system, our emotions, our psyches, about pregnancy, about birth, because I think that knowing about pregnancy and birth helps us to understand the mystery of the feminine, and that it's like,
Especially at a younger age as
yeah,
well.
completely like understanding it. And still, it's my experience that there's so much wisdom and so much knowledge that that we carry within us that goes way, 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 way beyond that, and that we're only just beginning to come into a time where that's awakening for many, many, many of us, and it is like birth. It's stepping into the mystery. That was my experience, was many times in my life, was really following that voice meant letting go of everything that's known and allowing myself to birth something that I don't know exactly where it's taking me. And that has always had such unimaginable things emerge in my life, like things that I couldn't have imagined. And that's why I think that these feminine rites of passage are like birth, that if we follow the movements of our intuition, of our womb, and of our soul, then it's a process of birth in our lives.
Yeah, beautiful. And like you're saying, it's like the knowing is the willingness to not know.
Yeah.
That you can only get to it by getting to it. Like unteachable things.
And you know, after that letting go, so many magical things happened, and so much more happened after that, which has taken me to where I am now. And that was the first step.
Thank you, Jaguar, for sharing that. After you went through this journey and you did make the enormous leap to leave midwifery, how did that resolve?
Well, it really put me on the path of establishing what I'm establishing now, which is the women's school. And that had lots of other steps to it. But the primary thing that I found is to really bring in more of a spiritual part, more of a spiritual world of pregnancy and birth. And that's what I felt called as part of my contribution to this work. And more going deeper into women's psyches, into the feminine energies, and that's what I went out to discover, so to say, then. Because I really feel that it's a field that one can immerse oneself in and study and spend time developing this work just as much as you might spend 4 years doing a bachelor midwifery, for example. And I find it so valuable, everything that I learned in that time, everything I learned from my doula studies before that, everything that I learned before that, meeting midwives all over the world in many different countries and many different cultures, all the feminine health work that I also had been offering before that. For me, really, the point was to go much deeper into the soul of what pregnancy and birth is, and to not only do that in a sort of roundabout small way, but to actually give that really the place that it deserves. And that's what the journey after that was all about.
That makes sense. And also how you then were incorporating doula work, because doula work is such an individual soul work, you know. It's like very much like when you're training as a doula, there's so many useful things you learn, but then in essence, at your first birth experience, it's you. It's you that you bring to it, right? It's literally your soul meeting those souls and how you're gonna.
And also what I noticed too is that for me, as what I'm here to do is something that goes beyond pregnancy and birth, and is really about the feminine, and is really about women and about what's happening at the moment, that to remember that the feminine is valuable, is valid, and to expose all the wisdom, all the knowledge about our bodies, our minds, our souls, our psyches. And I see birth as being a very, very pivotal key area of understanding for that. And then there's this massive universe that opens up around that, and that's what I went on to discover, explore, and now I'm teaching. Thank you, Annie, for asking me that question.
Thank you for sharing all those amazing things, yeah.
And she just asked me one of the difficult questions. And the way that we would like to wrap this up today and close on this is that is on this topic, you know, that this work of working in the birthing field and being a woman, offering guardianship, offering mentorship, offering skills, medical skills, emotional skills, all the tools that the different birth workers, doulas, midwives, spiritual midwives, birth keepers have, is that really it goes beyond classifications, and really we're all called into this field for very different reasons. And as you can hear from all of our stories, we all have had such different stories with it, and we've only shared with you guys like a little tiny puzzle piece of each one of our individual stories. And what to me is so important is that as women working in the birthing field and in the feminine field, with the feminine, with pregnancy, with birth, with women's health, we're all collectively working together with something that is sacred. And the key of that is giving into that field what we each have to share, and that's going to grow and evolve as we all grow and evolve. And at the moment, we're all here in Berlin offering, amongst other things, doula services, and it's so great to have each other as colleagues. And yet we're in a pioneering time, you know, we're in a pioneering time where we're all waking up, and there's a lot of change happening possible for women. And to know that whether you're a woman who's pregnant and giving birth, or whether you're a woman interested in working in the birthing field, or you are working in the birthing field, I think that the important thing is we're all in it together. We're all women on our path, following our hearts, following our souls, and contributing that which we came here to contribute.
Exactly.
That's a nice ending. Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you.